Okay. Yes, so again, I've started recording this session. So I just want to show you all something quickly. This was something I worked on this semester. So one thing you know about me is that for students who have been coming for this workshop, I'm also a student here at Lancaster Bible College, right? I'm a student here, I'm a writing consultant, and I'm also an adjunct professor here at Lancaster Bible College, right? So I want you all to know that I'm a student like you. So most of what I'll be talking about in this course would also comprise some of my experiences as a student, right? Not just as a professor here at Lancaster Bible Study, like at Lancaster Bible College. So I just want to show you all something quick, something I worked on the previous course. So 1 second. All right. So give me 1 second, please. So this was a course I was taking. I just completed it. That's a course in Greek. So it was I think 16-week course in Greek. And so I just want to show you all one instruction. There's this particular instruction that we had in the course. Yeah, it was one of these five. That's per Erasmus. Yes, now look at this instruction. Just take a look at this. Look how long this is. Just take a look at this. This instruction is so long. And we had to complete an assignment based on this instruction. And it's just extra long, right? And so in most cases, I realize that many students will see this kind of instruction and they're like, you know what, I'm done. I'm done with college. I don't want to do this again, right? So because they're like, where would I even start from? Where do I start from? Like, this is just, I don't understand what my professor wants, right? But then I just want you all to know that there's actually a simple formula for interpreting instructions. There is a simple formula. No matter how long an instruction is, there's just this one simple formula you should always use. And we'll talk about that later in this course, no matter how long. So one of the biggest goal is this, right? One of the biggest goal for this session is that you are able to interpret any assignment instruction, no matter how lengthy the assignment instruction is, you are able to interpret it. That should be the goal of this course. I mean, that would be the goal of this session, right? So we'll be going through different expectations for interpreting assignment instructions or assignment prompts, right? And the goal is just to, I don't want you all to get overwhelmed when you see a lengthy instruction as this. In this course, we had even our final paper. Let me show you the final paper. Let me show you. So for those of you that will be doing Greek later on, you might actually have some instructions like this. Okay, this is our final paper. Now just look at this. See how long this is. Okay, no, this wasn't long. Okay, this is a summary of submission, final exam, content. Yeah, this is also long, kind of long too. All right. So there was just a lot going on here. And so there was this other one too. Let me show you some of these other ones too. So you're going to, for those of you that are new, right, to college writing, you're going to actually experience these kinds of instructions, right? This was another one. Let's take in. Very long one, extra long. All right. So that was it. And yes, so again, right? Many times we would actually, encounter these kinds of instructions, and then we just become overwhelmed and sometimes confused. I won't lie to you. The first time I saw this kind of instruction in this course, right? I was so overwhelmed. I was like, where do I even start from with this? Because it was just too long, right? But then I was able to apply some formulas um and some checkpoints, right? I call them checkpoints. Personally, I call them checkpoints. Some formulas and checkpoints to help me to interpret these instructions clearly, right? So let's look at some things. Let's go back to here. So how many of you, okay, before going, how many of you here have actually how many of you have had experiences about instructions like that? Like what we just saw. How many of you have seen instructions like that are just so long and lengthy and they're kind of overwhelming? If you've had that experience, let me see your hands up. Yeah, yeah. All right. Yeah. Jerry, have you had that experience?
Well, more of mine was unclear when the professor wrote. It wasn't like he really gave instructions on what he wanted. It was kind of vague, and that
Yeah,
was a problem.
exactly. Very well. Yeah, and you find many of those, Jerry. Thank you for even saying that. Like you find so many instructions that are vague, right? And sometimes the question we ask ourselves is why? Why is our professor, why are they asking us this, or why are they providing these vague instructions? We're going to also talk about that later. But then let me even introduce you to that, right? Because there are expectations, right? I always use the word, so you hear the word expectations almost throughout this session, right? There are expectations from you, right? Your professor has some expectations from you, right? Before you take his course, right? So again, the reason why some of those instructions are vague is because your professor is not expected to teach you the basics of interpreting an instruction. That's not his job, right? In his mind, it's not like he's trying to be, rude or mean to any of you. No, that's not his intention. But in his mind, he's like, all right, the students coming into my class, they are done with high school, right? So it's expected that they know the basics. So that's why sometimes the instructions are always vague. Like the experience I told you, like a student wrote in his evaluation, he said, I enjoyed the course. This was really, really good course. But the instructions are not, I expect that the instructions should be like step 1, step 2, step 3. I was expecting those kinds of instructions. I'm like, no, you will never find that anywhere, right? You will never find that in any college, right? Except you have an extra nice professor, right? So, all right, so let's go on. So we even go on to that right now. So now the first thing you need to know is this, right? So the first thing you want to do is define the relationship between you and your professor. So how does the college environment define the relationship between you and your professor? That's the first thing you need to know before starting any course or before starting any assignments, right? Let's define this relationship, right? So this is it. The first thing you need to know is that the relationship between you and your professor is not transactional, but conversational, right? So your professor's job is not to tell you what to do, basically, on a basic level. Your professor's job is not to just teach you about an idea. That's not your professor's job. Even in the field of science, right? That's not a professor's job. Your professor's job is to help you think about an idea, right? So that's why it's conversational. So your professor is saying something about an idea, and then your professor also expects that you respond to that idea, right, in your own terms, right? So it's conversational. You are exchanging, you and your professor, you are meant to be exchanging ideas, right? That's so everything. So that's why sometimes the instructions will be vague, because your professor wants you to think, right? So the instructions sound vague because your professors actually wants you to think. Your professors do not want to think for you, right? So that's one thing you should put into perspective. So this means that both professor and student are in a dialogue concerning an issue or idea, whereby they are trying to persuade each other by dialoguing different perspectives concerning an issue, right? So you and your professor, you're looking at one issue from different perspectives. Your professor does not expect you to identify an issue from his own perspective. No. Like, your professor wants you to actually think through an issue and apply the issue to your own personal context, or to your own personal experience, or to your own personal interest, right? And then your professor is also expecting that you dialogue more perspective to an issue, meaning that, your professor is not just expecting that you, people use the word regurgitate, right? Your professor is not expecting you to regurgitate his own ideas. Your professor is also expecting that you add more ideas to his points, right? Your professor is also expecting that you disagree sometimes, right, with him or her, right? So one thing you have to note is this, right? Most of those instructions, right, as Jerry said, they would surely be vague. You'll find many of that. That's because your professor wants you to think, right? So that's the goal. And then the final part is that your professor wants you to identify a situation or issue based on a different context, right? So in most cases, when your professor is explaining a point, he's explaining that point from his own context, or from his own experience, or from his own personal understanding, right? So that means that your professor is also expecting that you explain the idea from your own personal context, understanding, or experience, or research, right? So that's what your professor is expecting. So now, why am I saying all of this? I'm saying all of this because I want you to know that your professor is expecting you all to be thinkers. So that's why you would always have long, extra long instructions and vague instructions, right? And then you're like, why are we even doing this, right? Let's not do this, right? Can you just be specific, professor? Now, one other thing I want to also tell you all is this, right? There is nothing wrong with asking your professor, there's nothing wrong with asking your professor to provide clarity concerning an instruction. There's nothing wrong with that. If you feel like, you've thought about the instructions, you're not still getting it, please make sure you reach out to your professor as soon as possible. Now, this is what I tell students: make sure you reach out to your professor before starting the assignment at all. Don't start the assignment until you've reached out to your professor. So that's a situation where you feel like you don't just understand what your professor wants. In fact, that should be your first step, right? Reach out to your professor. Now, why am I saying this? Because it has been observed that many adult students don't do that, right? Including myself. Many adult students would not reach out to their professors. And there are several reasons, but I'm not going to say those reasons here because I don't want to really I don't want to generalize. But there are several reasons. You can go research it yourself, right? But many adult students would not. Like, they would just prefer to, figure it out themselves, right? Which is fine too, right? But sometimes, feel free to reach out to your professor, because that's also their job. Their job is to provide clarity, Right. So now, typical expectation from a professor, right? Professors expect that you understand what they are communicating. Now, I just want you all to know that what I'm going to talk about, right, is the expectations. Like what are some of those expectations from your professor as you complete an assignment, right? Your professors expect that you understand what they are communicating. That's the first thing, right? So you must be able to comprehend whatever your professor is teaching. You must be able to comprehend the lessons. You must be able to comprehend the required readings and the required videos you should watch. You must be able to comprehend those, right? And then the second part is, once you're done comprehending your professor's points and lessons, you must be able to respond and evaluate those points, right? You should be able to evaluate those. And then the third part is that your professor expects you to apply lessons to your context, right? So don't just, I'll say this, right? Always feel free to apply whatever you learn to your experience or to your personal environment or context, right? And then your professor expects that you are trying to persuade him concerning an issue, right? So that's what your professor expects, right? Because see what I said. I said both professor and student are trying to be persuasive. The truth is that in an academic environment, it's not only the student that is trying to persuade concerning an idea. Your professor is also trying to persuade you concerning an idea. And why is your professor trying to persuade you? Your professor is trying to persuade you because he expects that you are all thinkers, right? You're scholarly thinkers, you're scholars, right? Your professor sees you as co-scholars, right? So, and then the sixth part is that your professor expects you to ask questions about concepts you don't understand. So if you don't understand, if, like I said earlier, right? If you feel like you need clarity concerning an idea or clarity concerning an instruction or a prompt, you must make sure you reach out to your professor. That's very important, right? And then the seventh part is professors expect you to understand the rudiments of comprehending prompts and readings, conducting research, formatting essay, formulating and organizing clear thoughts, right? Now, it says here, your professor is not obligated to teach you those. Your professor is not obligated to teach you how to comprehend instructions. So that's one thing you should know. Because your professor expects that, you're in college, that means you're a scholar. So your professor is not obligated by any means to teach you how to comprehend instructions or comprehend readings, right? Your professor is not obligated to teach you how to research. Your professor expects that you already know how to research, right? Now, your professor is not obligated to teach you how to format your essay, right? I'm sure many of you must have used the APA style, MLA style, and all of that, SBL. The professor is not obligated to teach you all of that. And if your professor teaches you that, that's awesome, right? That's an added benefit for you, right? So it's expected that, if your professor says in the instruction that you should use the APA style, it is expected that you conduct your own personal research on how to use the APA style, right? Your professor does not have to teach you that. Then your professor is not obligated to teach you how to formulate and organize clear thoughts, like how to write grammatical sentences, how to write persuasive points. The professor is not obligated to teach you that, right? Your professor is only grading. So what your professor is doing is this, right? Your professor is just reading your work like an audience. That's it. So if you submit an assignment, the professor is just enjoying it. That's it. and he grades your work based on how you are able to convince him concerning a point. Right? So he's just grading, just reading your work like an audience, like how a normal audience would read your work. Right? Your audience would not teach you how to write. All they do is just read what you've written. Right? And that's your professor right there. So I just want you all to know that. So this is it, right? What does this all mean? This means that you're actually doing one good thing right now. You are in this session and you are learning how to interpret a prompt much better, right? Which is a good thing. But then if you feel like you don't know how to conduct research, if you feel like you don't know how to format your essays accurately, if you feel like you still need to develop your formulation and organization of clear thoughts, please, I would advise that you seek help, right? Like, use the Ally Center. We are here for you. You can always you can actually schedule a one-on-one session with us, and we'll help you talk to friends and families that are so good at writing. So I know friends that will talk to their pastors help them to revise their essays and all of that. So you can just always do that, right? But note that your professor is not obligated to teach you the basics of grammar. No, that's not your professor's job, right? So that's it. Any questions so far? Any questions so far? Or any comments? Okay, another question is this, like what I just said right now, does it feel intimidating, kinda?
I had an opportunity to look at some of your work pertaining to the thesis statement and things of the sort, but I looked at all those videos after I turned in my paper.
Yeah.
So I knew that I should have been in the Ally Center prior to turning in the paper, because a lot of the things that you had spoke about on the videos that you had recorded, they weren't in the paper, and I just knew that this paper was going to get destroyed. It was a passing grade, but it could have been a lot better.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that, Jerry. Honestly, you've raised up a good point. In fact, what you just said right now, I was actually going to talk about it at the end of this session, right? But let's talk about it now. Especially the thesis statement, right? If you don't know how to draw a thesis statement, right? If there is anyone here that does not know how to construct a thesis statement, I would advise that you seek help with the Ally Center. Like, that should be the number one thing you should know how to do, right? That should be the number one. As you're pursuing your academic career, please know how to construct a thesis statement. Very important, right? Now, your professor, again, right? Like what Jerry's saying, your professor is not obligated to teach you how to construct a thesis statement. Your professor expects that you have a thesis statement in your final papers, right? But your professor is not obligated to teach you how to draw a thesis statement. So please seek help, right? Just seek help if you feel like you need to know how to draw a thesis statement. In fact, I'm telling you, right, you can go through a course, right? Most courses are 8 weeks, right? You can actually go through a course, right, without your professor telling you that you need to construct a thesis statement. But then he still expects that you construct a thesis statement. He's not going to even tell you, but he expects it, right? So I just want you all to understand that there are just these intrinsic expectations from students, in most cases, your professor will not tell you some of these expectations. All right. Okay. So, any questions? I saw Lisa, you raised your hands up. Lisa? Lisa?
Well, I just didn't realize that your question was largely rhetorical when you said, who doesn't know how to write a thesis statement? So I was just volunteering that I don't, or I assume that I don't. It's been over 40 years since I've been in school, and I don't remember how to do very basic things like bibliographies and citations, and I'm starting fresh as if I had never learned it, honestly. So
Yes. Well, thank you very much, Lisa, for saying all of that. That's good. So thank you for being honest and vulnerable. So one thing you should do, Lisa, is this. Okay, no, so let me ask you, are you a new student? Yeah, so that makes it good. That's good, right? So what you should do right now is from next week, right? Just at least schedule to meet with the Ally Center once a week, just to prepare you, right, for college expectations, right? For some of these, like the Ally Center can prepare you for some of these expectations that your professors would have, some of these intrinsic expectations, right? So the Ally Center can help you with that.
So you recommend actual meetings, or I looked at the Ally Center and the I don't know what they're called. I would call them a training module, but the training modules on, various things like how to research and this and that and the other, you would recommend having one-on-one training instead, or?
Yes, one-on-one training.
Okay.
Right? Because when you have a one-on-one training, the Ally Center consultants would actually evaluate your strength and weaknesses, right? So that's what the one-on-one training would help, right? Because you also need to know your strength, not just your weaknesses.
Okay.
All right. Yeah. So, yes. All right, let's go on, right? Again, don't feel intimidated with everything I've just said right now, right? I know I'm talking about some of these intrinsic expectations from your professors. Don't feel intimidated at all, right? The good thing is that now you know this, right? All right. So kinds of assignments in an academic environment. So you need to know this. What are the kinds of assignments, right? But now you should know this. I'm going to talk about this, but this is not important. It's not really important, honestly, but I'm just going to talk about it, right? It's not that important. The main thing is that you know how to see an instruction and interpret it, right? But then I just want you all to just recognize some of these, right? So I'm sure many of you must have seen this. You have like the personal research interest, right? So this is where you construct evidential-based or evidence-based essays regarding a topic of interest that connects to your field of study, right? So this is just like personal research. Like for some of you, how many of you wrote how many of you submitted the final paper last week or earlier this week? Awesome. Yes. So personal research interest is when your professor tells you to choose a topic of interest, right? It gives you the benefit of choosing your own topic. That's what personal research interest means, right? So you choose a topic and then you conduct a research based on that topic. So I think sometimes that's always the hardest, right? Where your professor just says, all right, you know what? You all have the freedom to choose your topic, right? But your topic must be based on whatever you're learning in the course, right? So you're free to do that. Now, course research interest. Now, this is where your professor would provide like a list of topics, right? And then you're supposed to choose, maybe one topic out of that list, and then you conduct the research on it. How many of you have done that before? Like a professor will provide like a bunch of topics, and then, yeah. So that's it. How many of you have done the personal research interest? Like you're given the freedom to choose your own topic. Yeah. So good. And then you have the reflective papers, right? I know many of you have done this. I think every student here have written one reflection paper here, right? So this is an assignment that requires that you study or consider a lesson, and then you consider how they inspire you and how they apply to your context, right? So how many of you enjoy writing reflection papers here? Or journals? Yes, I know we all enjoy that, right? Like you're just writing about your life and your experiences, how you came to know the Lord, even when your professor is not asking you to state how you came to know the Lord, you just want to add it in there, right? So we all enjoy that. I enjoy it too. I won't lie to you all. I enjoy writing reflection papers, right? And then we have the discussion papers, right? That's the stressful one. I call it the stressful one because you have to respond to your colleagues, right? But I enjoy it too, right? So discussion papers are opportunities for you to like post a reflection. Basically, you're posting a reflection concerning an idea or a required reading, and then you are responding to other students' posts, right? So I'm sure many of you must have done that. Like it's required that every student that graduates from college must have this experience where they are discussing with their colleagues. And then we have summary, right? Summary is where you're required to articulate and explain in your own words the main points and ideas from a text, right? So that's summary, right? I'm sure many of you must have written that before. Your professor is like, all right, read this text and then briefly give us a brief description of the main points in the text, right? I'm sure many of you must have done that. And then we have quizzes, right? How many of you enjoy quizzes here? All right. Yes. All right. We love quizzes. Well, honestly, so I took last semester. No, sorry, not last semester. I just concluded like Greek and Hebrew at the same time, right? And there were just a lot of quizzes, a lot. And honestly, I didn't really enjoy those, right? This is just a lot. You had to like just study a lot so that you could do very well, like so that you can actually pass, right? So there's a lot of reading just for the quiz alone, a lot. So, and a lot of memorization, right? Because it's Greek and Hebrew, right? So you have to memorize words that you may not use in your life again after the course. But that was good. So quizzes, right? So requires you to answer a series of multiple direct questions concerning a subject, right? So these are the kinds of assignments you would encounter in an academic environment. Like I said, these are not really important, right? I'm just introducing you all to those, right? Especially for Lisa, right? Lisa, you don't have to take this all too serious, right? Not that important. The main thing is that when you see any instruction, you're able to interpret it. That's the main thing. That should be your main goal, right? You shouldn't care about, if the assignment is a personal research or a course research or reflective. No, that shouldn't concern you, right? All right. Okay, so now this is the important part, right? Now this is what I call the big boy, right? This is the important part, right? So parts of an assignment instruction or part of an assignment prompt, right? So we have the title, expectations for consideration. So again, thank you, Carol, Lisa, and Jerry, I can see you all are taking notes, right? And to every other person taking notes, thank you for doing that. Please, just for this section, I want you all to take notes, right? Just take notes of this 4. You can write it down somewhere, that will be fine. Title, expectations for considerations, expectations for studying, and expectations for submission content. These are the 4 parts of an assignment prompt. No matter how long an assignment prompt is, no matter how long, even if it's 100 pages, it will surely have these 4 main parts. No matter how lengthy the assignment prompt is, you will find these 4 main parts. All right? So let's go to the title or the topic, right? So this is mainly positioned at the heading of the module. The topic provides a brief idea of the nature of your assignment, right? So the topic, right, or the title of the module or the title of the assignment provides a brief idea of the nature of your assignment. So for instance, you can have a title like reflective paper, discussion paper, journal paper, right? How many of you have seen those kinds of titles? Can I see your hands up? Yeah, good. So you can have that, right? And then the second part of a title could be the context of study, right? So after your professor indicates the nature of the assignment, the next part is the context of study, right? The topic provides the context of study for the assignment. For instance, a module will combine the nature of the assignment with the context of the assignment. So for example, you have a title like reflection paper, right? Which is the nature of the assignment, right? Reflection paper. And then you have a study of ambiguous, a healthy church. Right, so it's just telling you the context of that assignment. So meaning that the whole assignment or the whole reflection paper you'll be writing will be based on a study of ambiguous, a healthy church, right? So that's just it. So normally your topic would comprise the nature of the assignment and the context. Right. And sometimes it would only, there are times where you just find only the nature, right? You just see reflection paper and that's it. All right. So let's look at an example somewhere here. Okay. So can someone tell me, look at this. Can someone tell me where is the title here? Or where is the topic? Anybody? What's the, all right, Abraham Elijah. I like your name, Abraham Elijah. You want to tell us what's the title of this assignment? Oh, all right, Willie Mays, you want to tell us?
I believe it's lexical analysis of some Greek word.
Yes, right. Yeah, thank you. Lexical analysis of estecan, right? So lexical analysis of estecan, right there. All right, that's good. That's good. That's good. That's the title, right? So when I read the title of the assignment, it helps me to understand what the assignment is all about, right? So now, why is this important? This is so important, right? This is extremely important. When you understand the title, when you see the title, it narrows down, it helps you to narrow down the context of interpretation. Meaning that, so now that I've seen that the title of this is Lexical Analysis of estecan, whatever I'm going to write in my final submission would not go outside the lexical analysis of estecan. I'm not going to say any other point or any other idea that goes outside of this, right? So this is helpful because I've found many students, right? You provide an instruction like this, a very long instruction like this, but then when they write their final paper or their assignment, they'll start talking about ideas that are not connected to this, right? So that's the use of the title. The title helps you to narrow down the context of interpretation. So that also means that everything you'll be reading, like just look at this. This is a very lengthy instruction. So this means that all the statements made here, right, are all connected to this, right? So that's helpful, right? Now I know that, all right, I know this is so lengthy, but I know that everything is helping me to understand this. Lexical analysis of STK. All right, so that's it. All right, so let's look at another one. This is one. Okay, frictional proposition. All right. Can someone help me right here? So it says here, reflection on presuppositional apologetics. Oh, I already said the answer. Let's look for something else. I'm sorry. Something I want to show you all. Okay. All right. Can someone tell me what's the title of this particular assignment? Anybody? Anybody?
A distinctly biblical and theological approach.
Exactly, a distinctly biblical and theological approach, right? So that's the title right there. And this is helpful, right? This helps me to understand that everything I'll be studying here, or all the instructions that I'll be studying, should connect to this, to the title. Everything. And yes, and your professors deliberately, like your professors would deliberately write the titles that way. So it's deliberate, right? So that's it. Now let's go to the other part. Let's go to the other part. All right, so we're done with that. Now, expectations for consideration. Expectation for consideration. This is the other part, right? We said there are 4 parts, right? The first part is the title, and we've talked about that. Second part is the expectations for consideration. So as stated earlier, the topic contains the context of the assignment. However, your professor will likely briefly explain the assignment's context in his own words. So again, like I said, we talked about the context, right? But then your professor might say, all right, I just want to explain the context. I want to, give further explanation of the context of this assignment. So many times you find your professors doing that, right? Many times. So, and it says, and again, look at the second part, it says, these brief explanations are your professor's consideration concerning ideas, required readings, or situations related to the assignment. They're just it's just your professor just explaining deep ideas from the assignment, right? Or deep ideas concerning the required reading or studies or videos in the assignment, right? He's just explaining in his own term. So remember what I said at the beginning, right? The relationship between you and your professor is conversational, right? I'm sure you'll remember that. So the expectation for consideration is where your professor is stating his own personal points concerning an idea. He's just saying his own personal outlook concerning an idea. All right. So as a result, your professor wants you to mentally consider this explanation before you embark on the remaining sections of the assignment prompts. Right. So that's very important. So again, take note of the word mentally. It's just a mental consideration. So your professor is just wants you to mentally consider all that he's saying. It's just a mindful consideration. He's not expecting you to write anything about what he's saying. He's not expecting you to write anything about it. All right? He just wants you to mentally consider. So I'll show you an example. It says here, usually these considerations are in the first paragraph of your assignment prompt. All right? Let me show you an example quickly. All right, let's look at this. All right, so let's look at this. Can someone just read? So there are 3 paragraphs here, right? So many of you can see 3 paragraphs here, right? So what paragraph do you think identifies the expectation for consideration? There are 3 paragraphs. So we have the first, second, and third, right? So which of these paragraphs identify the expectation for consideration? Can you type it in the chat box? If you think it's the first paragraph, type 1. If you think it's the second paragraph, type in 2. If you think it's the third paragraph, type in 3. Or if you think it's the first and second paragraph, type in 1 and 2. If you think it's if you think it's the whole 3 paragraph, just type whole paragraphs. Right. 1 minute to do that. In the chat box. Okay. Oh, good. So someone says 3. 3. Carol says paragraph 1. Jerry says 1. Willie Mae says 1 and 2. Abraham Elijah says 3. Carol says 1 and 2. I think Carol changed her mind. That's good. Berlin Jean says 3. All right, let's look at it. Consideration. Remember, your professor is just saying what he thinks, right? About whatever you'll be studying in this assignment prompt, right? It's just giving his own personal thoughts,
But
right? And
I was going through it too fast. I want to change it again to 1 and 3. 1 and 3.
Okay, 1 and 3. All right, let's look at this. All right, let's look at it. It says here, what is the difference between the various approaches to apologetics? How do these differences manifest themselves in actual conversations with unbelievers? How do we most effectively persuade the unbeliever of the truth of the gospel? Apologetics is most often perceived to be a philosophical endeavor. Certainly, apologetics intersects with philosophy at the number of points. Yet, apologetics is more specifically a biblical and theological endeavor. That is, we should draw our understanding and practice of apologetics from the Bible, and our methodology should be consistent with our theology. In this week's video, we critique the various methods of apologetics practiced by Christians and show how one approach is the most consistent biblically and theologically while incorporating the insights of the other approaches. All right. What do you think? So let's look at this again. I see some people said 3. three is not correct because your professor is not telling you to, your professor is not stating any consideration here. Your professor is just telling you what to do, right? Can you see 3? This third paragraph is just saying, in this week's video, we critique the various methods of apologetics practiced by Christians and show how one approach is the most consistent biblically and theologically, while incorporating the insights of the other approaches. So this is not a consideration. But then if you want to talk about consideration, I'll say this 1 and 2 are the considerations. This is, so I saw Willie Mays, you're correct, 1 and 2. And if you chose only 2, you are correct, right? Yeah, Berlin Jean, yes, you're correct. Okay, well, you said 2 and 3, but then just 2, right? If you chose only 2, you're correct. If you chose 1 and 2, you're correct, right? Sorry, 1 second, please. So that's how you should approach this. So so remember I said the consideration is where your professor just wants you to mentally think about an idea. He's just sharing his own personal thoughts concerning an idea that you would learn, right? So that's it. All right, let's do another one. Let's check another one. All right, let's check another one. Consideration. All right. Okay, let's check this. Can someone, so let's read this. So there are 2 paragraphs here. Right? No, sorry, there are 3 paragraphs. We have 1, 2, and then this. Can you all type in, right? Just look through it, just glance through it and tell me, right? Which of the paragraphs contain the expectation for observation? Is it the first, is it the second, or the third? If you think it's the first and second, say it's the first and second. If you think it's just the third, say it's the third. If you think it's the whole 3, then just put whole 3, right? All right, we have just 1 minute to do that. All right. Remember, the expectation for consideration is where your professor is just sharing his personal thoughts about an idea. He's just saying, this is what I think about this idea. Remember that. That's consideration. Right. So let's look at it. Let's look at what someone said 3. It can't be 3, right? See, look at 3. 3 here is, it says list 3 people you already pray for or can begin praying for. The professor here is not stating a personal thoughts concerning an idea. But if you look at 1, the first paragraph, one of the most important things to remember about apologetics is that it is not merely an intellectual or academic exercise. What you are learning in this course is meant to be put into practice in real life conversations with living, breathing human beings. That is consideration right there, right? The professor just wants you to consider this. That's his personal thoughts. Now look at this. Another important truth is that prayer is the source of power and confidence in apologetics. We should pray daily that God will give us the courage to initiate conversations about the gospel with those we know and meet. This right here is also a consideration. So if you chose 1 and 2, that's correct. Right? Ibrahim Elijah, good job. Berlin Jean, good job. Willie Mays, good job. If you chose only 2, that's still good. All right, so I'm going to ask Carol, right? Carol, why did you choose 3?
I misunderstood what we're doing. I understood what you told us to do, but when I got ready to do it, then I started thinking about it something different. That's why. But now that we're going over it, now my mind has gone back to what you initially told us, and we're considering the expectations of the professor.
Yes.
But when I
Good.
did it, I started thinking about, for some reason, my mind shifted to instruction.
Yes.
And then when you said you only have so many minutes to do it, then I really just felt like I had to rush through reading it. So it's a lot going on over here, but I'm following. I understand. I get it.
Good. That's good. Yeah, that's good. Yeah. So again, like everyone, the expectation for consideration, right, is where your professor is just stating his own personal thoughts concerning an idea, or concerning what you would learn. Right? He's just saying, this is what I think concerning what you learn. Now, this is one thing. This is why we are learning this. Your professor is never asking you to write anything about the consideration. In your essay, when you're typing your essay, you don't have to type anything concerning this. You don't need it again. All your professor just wants you to read it. That's all. All you're doing for the expectation, when we are looking at the expectation for consideration, all you're doing is reading, and that's it. You're not doing any other thing. You don't have to write about it. The professor is just sharing knowledge with you. That's all. All right, Jerry.
That's funny because every paper that I wrote on every assignment that I wrote, I've always referred back and used some of what was written as a springboard into my paper.
Yeah. And Jerry, and one thing you can notice is that there's almost nothing wrong with that. But the point I'm trying to make is this, right, Jerry? Your professor desires that you just mentally, even if you type some ideas from these considerations in your essay, it's fine, but not everything though, right?
Well, I used to get a lot of comments, and it was usually the same comment. You're not using the original thought. So instead of giving me 10 points, he would always give me 8.
Oh,
I'm not
I see.
using, I'm like, I'm not using the original thought. Wait a minute, I thought about this, but I did use your
Oh yeah,
your thought, the precursor of mine. So it was not my original thought. It didn't stem from me. And I understand now. That's why I was
yeah. Okay, now I see what you're saying. Yes, you're right. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Especially for a reflection paper, like your professor, in many reflection papers, you see this. You always find statements like this.
Okay.
You would always, right? But then your professor is not expecting that you summarize this or you even refer to it. He just wants you to mentally consider. It's just for your mind. That's all. It's not for you to type or to write.
Got it.
Yeah. All right. Any questions? Yeah. And now this is one thing I want you to note, right? In many cases, all right, you find out that you have this lengthy assignment instruction, right? Honestly, this is like 50% of that lengthy assignment instruction. The professor is not expecting that you write anything about that. Do you get it? He's not expecting it. He just wants you to read it and think about it, and that's it. Forget about it. Like, okay, no, don't forget about it, but just think about it. Keep it in your mind, right? All right. Any questions, right, from any other person?
Yes, yes. Oh, go ahead.
On, please. No, go ahead, please.
Yes, so in other words, he just wants you to follow the instructions, like listing the 3 people and 150 to 200 words, write their names and relationships to you, and what you think are the greatest challenges to engaging them with the gospel. That's it.
Yes,
right?
sir. Yes, sir. Yes.
Gotcha.
I'm sorry. I don't even know who was speaking. Sorry. Is that
Willie.
Willie?
Yes.
Yeah.
Willie.
Yeah. Yes, you're correct.
Just follow the instructions.
Yes.
Okay.
And guess what, Willie? That's what we're going to talk about. But that's the third part, right? You've taken us to the third part, right? But then we're still going to come back to this. But one thing I'll mention is this, right? Everyone, this is so important. But we're going to talk about it again later. But let me just talk about it now because Willie brought it up. In many cases, you will never find this in an instruction. My professor was just gracious. Even he wrote there as like a subheading, right? Instructions. Many times your professor would not even put that. This would, in many cases, you will not even find this. You just find only this. It's now left for you to know that this is the instruction and this is just the expectation for consideration.
So right? How would he set this up without the word instructions? It'll just be 2 spaces underneath both paragraphs or 3 paragraphs.
That could be, but I would advise you don't use that. You don't use that strategy to find the instruction, right? Really, I would advise you don't use that. So what you want to look for is what we call imperatives, right? Imperative sentences. Sentences that sound like a command, right? And how do they look, right? Like most of these sentences, they start with a verb, or some people say they start with a subjunctive. Words like list, right? List is a verb. List 3 people. List. So the sentence is starting with a verb, right? You see, it's telling you what to do. List 3 people you already pray for or can begin praying for. Write their names, their relationship to you, and what you think what you think are the greatest challenges to engaging with them with the gospel. List. So once you see the word, like if I'm reading this and the word instructions, right, is not here, once I see words like this, once I see a sentence like this that starts with a verb or an imperative, list 3 people, that would automatically tell me that this is the instruction, right? We're going to talk about all of this later, all right? But actually, one thing you should also note is that there are actually limited number of these kinds of verbs, right? So we don't have a lot of them. So you can learn all those kinds of verbs in one sitting, right? You can see words, instead of list, you can see words like choose. You can see words like outline 3. You can see words like identify, right? Identify 3 people you already pray for. You can see so many words, right? But they're not that many, actually. Yeah, so that's it. So Willie, did you get that? Was that clear?
Yes, very clear.
All right, sounds good. All right, so let's go to the next part. We are getting there, Willie. We're getting to that part very soon. All right, so we are done with expectations for consideration, right? Now, the second part is expectations for studying. Expectation for studying. Now, many of you have submitted assignments in the past that will require that you read a text or you watch a video before even starting the assignment, right? Many of us have had that. So there is always that expectation for studying. In many assignments, you would have that. So you must study a text. You must study a text before typing your assignments. All right. So in most cases, your professor provides required readings and screenings for you to study before starting your assignment. It will be best if you study them before starting your assignment. Like, it would be best you study those readings. And these are within the consideration paragraph. So sometimes you find those within the consideration paragraph or the prompt second paragraph, right? So let's look at some examples here. Sorry. So let's look at this. Let's look at this. All right, let's check something. So this was my Greek class. I had translating activities, logos visual, and then sorry. All right, let's look at this part. Let's just look at this. Let's look at this. All right, so we have all right, so can someone tell me where is the consideration for studying here? Look at all of this. Where do you think the consideration for studying is? So, okay, we have like the first paragraph, we have this second paragraph, and then we have this third paragraph here. So, and then we have this fourth paragraph here. So within those four paragraphs, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. Where is the consideration for studying? Is it the first, second, third, or fourth?
I'll say the second, Willie.
All right. The assigned chapters for this week will provide you with examples for a number of 5 days. Read. Excellent. Very good. So we have the third and we also have the fourth, right? Read Merkel Exegetical Gems for Biblical Greek, chapter 1 to 11, to get started on this discussion. All right. So you always find words like read. In many cases, trust me, you will never, your professors will not give you subheadings like this, right? To notify you that you must read a text, right? It's just only going to indicate the text you should read. So you have this read Merkel. So in many cases, you'll find that consideration for studying, right? Let's look at another one. So you must always read it. Okay. No. All right, let's look at this. Oh, this is a long one. Can you see this? So, as you can see here, right? So there we can actually see the consideration for studying here, right? Remember, a video is also a consideration for studying. So this is the first consideration for studying. And then Can someone tell me the second consideration? Any other person? What's the second consideration? The first one is the video, right? Internal critique. What's the second one?
It's to read Chatraw and Allen, chapters 10 to 13.
Exactly. Good. Good. Right? Exactly. And then what else? It says here, as you read, be sure to take notes, highlight important passages, and write down questions that arise as you think through these author's points. Right? So that's consideration for studying. Now, note that your professor is not just telling you what to study, the professor is telling you how you should study. Right? Not just what you should study, but how. So I want you to know that when your professor is telling you how you should study, he's just also calling you to a mental consideration. Right? This is what you should do while you're studying. So whatever you do while you're studying, you're not doing it while you're typing your essay. So meaning that he's not saying that you should highlight important passages, write down questions in your essay. That's not what he's saying you should do. He's just saying that while you are reading, you should just, make those notes. Maybe on a pad or something, right? Or in your sticky notes, not in your essay. So just like the consideration for expectation, right, that we have here, like this part here, right? Your professor is not asking you to, type whatever he has written here in your essay, right? That's not what he's not asking you to do any of that. He's just saying that you should think about this, because an academic, the relationship between the professor and the students must be conversational. So it shouldn't be one-sided at any point. So it shouldn't be that the professor is just providing instructions, right? No, it shouldn't be that. The professor must provide considerations before providing instructions, right? So it's not only the students that will provide considerations or answers. The professors must also do that. So your professor is just saying you should think about this, right? You're not supposed to write it in your essay. And also right here, where you're supposed to consider the studies, the professor is only telling you how to study and what to study. So again, he's not asking you to type in anything in your essay, right? Nothing here should be typed in your essay, right? So any questions? Any questions? All right, let's go to the last part. Right, so we are done with expectation for studying. Now, expectation for submission content, right? Really, we are right there, right? I'm sure you're excited about this. So this is the part that Willie was talking about, expectation for submission content. This prompt section contains details about how you should communicate ideas in your submission draft. This prompt section contains details about how you should communicate ideas. And not just how, please. So if you're taking notes about this, I think I'm going to correct this. Not just how. It contains details about how and what you should communicate in your submission draft. Right? So that's what it is, right? So here is where your professor is telling you, what he wants to see in your essay, right? So the previous parts that we've talked about does not directly connect to what you write in your essay. like the expectation for studying and the expectation for consideration, right? They don't directly connect, or let's say they indirectly connect to what you would write in your essay. But the expectation for submission content directly tells you what is expected in your essay, right? So information such as, specific questions, your professor will provide specific questions you should answer. Your professor will provide specific points and thoughts, right? You should engage with, right? Your professor will provide page range, right? The page range, maybe word count, or the page range, maybe you should write 5 pages, right? Or your professor will provide the sometimes, not all the time, your professor will provide the organization style. The professor will provide the word count. Professor will provide the formatting style. In most cases, your professor would always provide the formatting style such as MLA, SBL, APA, and so on and so forth, right? Your professor might also provide the citation counts, right? Meaning that sometimes it might say, you should provide a minimum or maximum of 6 sources in your work, right? And your professor might also provide, submission instructions. All right, your professor might provide submission instructions, right? How you should submit the assignment, or when you should submit the assignments, right? So those are like the scenarios for expectation for the submission content, right? So let's look at an example quickly. All right, let's take a look at this one. All right, the professor was even gracious. So we have this, the consideration, we have the instruction, right? And as you all can see, this particular instruction that we have here is so lengthy, right? It is a long instruction, right? But then we now have the instruction. Instruction says read Shaw and Allen's chapter 10 to 13. So when you have read chapter, would this be the expectation for studying or expectation for submission contents? Can someone help me? What expectation is that? Read chapter and Allen chapters 10 to 13. Is it for studying or for contents?
Study.
Studying.
Yeah.
Exactly, studying. Good job, everyone. Right? All right. So now let's go to this, right? It says here, once you have completed the reading, write and submit a digest on the reading, summarizing the key points and offering critique and reflection of what has been learned. Right? Write a 600 to 700 word digest summarizing what you read. Specifically, be sure to identify the 3 to 4 most important points you found helpful in understanding Christian apologetics. Provide adequate explanations for the points you identify. Right? Can you all see? So, like what I've read so far, what do you think the professor is saying? Let me just ask someone. Abraham, Elijah, what do you think the professor wants me to do with this information?
I'm reading it. Okay. Hold on. Can you hear me, sir?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Once you've completed it. Well, this is definitely an instructional part of the reading.
Yes.
So you're being instructed to complete the reading, write and submit a digest in the reading, Write a 600 to 700 word digest summarizing what you read. Identify 3 to 4 most important points you find helpful in understanding Christian apologetics. I have a little Greek background. You asked me that word earlier. I haven't had Greek in 20 years. I got an A in 2 coordinated Greek courses, but I kind of forgot that word, but I remember it remotely. But I would use the word apologia, I guess, to kind of articulate my own thoughts.
Yeah.
And connect it to the embodiment of what's here. But it looks like this is an instruction part.
Exactly. That's the instruction part. Good job. Yes. Excellent. Good job. Good job. Yeah. So, but then the question I'm also going to ask is like, what do you think? So this goes to anybody, right? What do you think? How would you use this part of this instruction? How would you even use it?
To frame my submission.
Exactly, to frame your submission. So this part contains what your professor wants to see in your essay, right? This part contains how and what should be in your essay, right? Remember what we said, the consideration, like let's look at this part. This part is just the consideration. The professor is just explaining his own personal thoughts. He's not saying you should write anything about it. He's just saying, think about what I've said. This part is the studying, right? The video, same. And the read chat roll is like, just think about it, right? Read it, take notes, highlight important passages and important points, right? That's the studying. Doesn't connect to how you should write the essay. But now this final part contains instructions about what should be in the essay or in your submission.
I have a question.
Right? Go on, please.
In his instructions, right, when he's talking about critique and reflection, can you explain that?
Good question, right? So critique means that you should basically critique an idea means you should evaluate an idea. And in our course, based on the context of this course, our professor expected that we explain why we agree or disagree with an idea, right? So remember, to critique an idea is not just to disagree, right? It's also to agree. But the only difference is that you're not just saying, oh, I agree with this point, right? You're stating in details why you agree or why you disagree, right? Lisa, this also goes to you because I know that you're new, like when your professor is asking you to critique an idea, he's not only asking you to disagree, right? Right? And to every other student, right? He's not only your professor is not only asking you to disagree. Your professor is saying that, explain why you may agree with this idea or explain why you may disagree. The main thing is that you are explaining. You're not just saying I agree. You're not just saying I disagree. No, you are explaining why, right? So that's it. So that's what it means, really. That's what it means to critique an idea, right? So again, this last part is actually the consideration for submission content, right? What should be in your essay or what should be in that discussion post, right? So it says identify 3 to 4 most important points you found helpful in understanding Christian apologetics, right? So look at this. It said once you have completed the reading, write and submit a digest on the reading, summarizing the key points and offering critique and reflection on what has been learned. Write a 600 to 700 word digest. Write a 600 to 700 word digest summarizing what you read. Specifically, be sure to identify the 3 to 4 most important points you found helpful in understanding Christian apologetics, provide adequate explanation for the points you identify. Now, let's look at this, because you'll find so many, because student gets overwhelmed by instructions that look like this, right? So can someone tell me what's the connection between this, right? Between this paragraph and these two outlines? Can someone tell me? What's the connection between this and this?
Is the
I
key
think the
point to the motion?
connection,
I'm
I'm
Lisa,
sorry, go ahead, Jerry.
No, please, Lisa, go ahead.
Well, I would say that, critique means to me that you break down these ideas into their fundamental parts and examine them and explain why you agree or disagree. And I think it's a demonstration, first of all, of what you learned when you combine the two, and that you are also demonstrating that you can take those fundamentals and then go off on your own independent evaluation of those. And it shouldn't be a catalyst for thought of your own on the same topic.
Yeah, that's correct. But then one thing I also want to back to Lisa, right? Lisa, what's the connection between this? Like, don't provide any explanation that goes outside what you're looking at in this instruction, right? So what's the connection between this paragraph and these two outlines? What's the connection between this and this two?
I'm sorry, I guess I don't understand what you're asking then. I mean, to me, it's one flows into the next.
Yeah, you're correct.
You're
yes.
reading and thinking about what he's telling you to, and then you're developing your perspective on that and explaining it.
Yes, you're correct. Yes, you're correct. Yes. Yes, you are correct. Yes, right? So basically, right, what I wanted you to do is this. So now this goes to everybody, right? When you're reading an instruction, try not to provide any interpretation outside what you're looking at. Do not, this is I've see, because I work with the Ally Center, I've found so many students doing this, and that what happens to them when they do that, they get so overwhelmed. Do not go outside the instruction, right? So this is what I want to, so I'll actually provide an example of what I'm talking about. So this is, if I were reading this instruction, right? First thing I'm looking at is, all right, my professor wants me to read this, right? I'm going to read it. I write it down. My professor wants me to read Chatra and Allen, chapter 10 to 13. Okay, all right, this part here says that as you read, be sure to take notes, highlight important passages. All right, my professor wants me to take notes, highlight important passages, right? I know that looks so boring, and right? Now, this third part, once you have completed the reading, write and submit a digest on the reading, summarizing the key points and offering critique and a reflection on what has been learned. Right, my professor wants me to read, summarize the key points, and offer a critique, right? Like Lisa is saying, tell my professor. So the first thing Lisa is saying is, provide a summary of what I've learned, offer my own critique and evaluation of what I've learned, and offer a reflection about what I've learned. 3 points, right? And then it says this, write a 600 to 700 word digest summarizing what you read. Now, everything I'm going to write, like the summarization, the critique, and the reflection, must be written in 600 to 700 words. That's what my professor wants. Then my professor is saying specifically. That word specifically is very important. So if you're taking notes, write this. When your professor says specifically, it does not mean that it's not transitioning you. Your professor is not transitioning you to a new instruction, right? Your professor is saying that, this is how you should portray everything, or this is how you should portray all the instructions that you have read so far, right? This is how you should portray all the instructions that you've read so far in your essay. So that's when most times you see your professor will use the word specifically. Be sure to identify 3 to 4 most important points you found helpful in understanding Christian apologetics. Provide adequate explanation for the points. Provide adequate explanation for the points you identify. Now, this could be confusing, right? Because your professor already said you should write 600 to 700 words, right? And now he's saying that you should identify 3 to 4 important points. That could be confusing. But then the professor is saying, see, look at the word he uses. He says identify. So meaning that while you are reading, summarizing, and offering a critique and reflection, right? You should identify those. You should actually provide or identify 3 to 4 most important points you found helpful, right? And then when you identify those, you are providing a summary, critique, and reflection of those. So meaning that while I'm reading, right, I'm looking for 3 to 4 important points. And then when I find those 3 to 4 important points, I provide a critique, a reflection, and what? And a summary, yeah. A summary, critique, and reflection of those 3 to 4 important points. So there are times, the reason I'm saying this is because there are times that students would see this, they'll think that's one instruction. And then when they read this, they'll think this is a separate instruction, meaning that they think this paragraph and this paragraph are disconnected. That's what they just think automatically. So your goal in most cases is to find ways to connect paragraphs, to find those keywords that connect paragraphs in an instruction. So look at this, right? Again, like I said, right? Like I said, I'm going to explain that again. The professor is saying that you should identify 3 to 4 most important points. So when you are reading, you're looking for those 3 to 4 most important points. And then when you find those important points, you summarize, you offer your critique, and then your reflection. And then everything you write in your essay must be 600 to 700 words, right? And then the professor is also saying here that you should provide, you should actually provide a response to your classmates, to at least 2 of your classmates, right? In 200 to 300 words. Right? So that's it. So I know that could sound a little confusing, but it's not all that confusing. Your professor's goal is not to confuse you. All right. So you must always look for those keywords, like he uses the word specifically. Be sure to identify 3 to 4 most important points. Right? So meaning that while you are reading, summarizing, and critiquing, you are identifying 3 to 4 most 4 most important points you found helpful, right? And then again, all right, guys, so let's look at this, right? Another question I'm going to ask is this. This is a very vague question, right? Where would you find these important points? Where, specifically, looking at this whole instruction, where are you expected to find those points?
In the reading.
Yeah.
In the reading, what's the name of the reading?
Oh, I'm sorry. Chad Raw and Allen.
Yes, correct. Correct. All right, so now this is the question for you all. Like, is there anything unclear? Anything confusing? Still confusing? Carol, what do you think?
I'm good. I'm following along. When you talk about it, it because it forces you to break it down. I think I've been doing these things, but now that I'm talking about it, it's almost like when you're trying to teach somebody something that you do all the time, and now you got to try to, like, maybe a recipe, you cook something and you just know how much to add. But when someone asks you the recipe, you have to try to figure out every component or ingredient that you put in, how, if you stir it or whatever. So anyway, that's what this is doing for me. It's forcing me to compartmentalize all these different things that are in these prompts that we receive.
Very good.
Because when you just asked how we would identify the 3 to 4 most important points, and my classmates said Chet, Raw, and Allen read the instructions, I would also have referred to what I saw in the videos.
Awesome.
But that's not in the instructions. It says as you read, be sure to take notes. But I would be reading, looking through the video. I would be writing down those. I would be highlighting the 3 and 4 most important points, not just what I read. I would have also done it with what I saw in the videos too. So
yes, right.
I need to stay within these instructions.
Yes.
But I don't think they would be mad. I don't think the instructor would be mad if I went, if I include, but they want to make it. Yeah. So.
Yeah, very good observation. Like, that's so good, right? I honestly say one of the biggest, I'm saying this because, in fact, the reason why I hosted this this workshop is because I noticed that so many students are getting, like the ones I come in contact with, right? They're getting so overwhelmed with their studies, all because they don't understand the instructions, or they're getting overwhelmed because they are misinterpreting the instructions entirely. Like some students, they will have like, the assignment is just expecting you to write maybe 3 sentences in your essay. But because the professor has written the instructions like this, right, so long, so lengthy, right, they'll think their professor is expecting them to write like 20 pages. But their professor is just expecting maybe just 1 page, right? Just 1 page. And you're writing, like, I met a student that the professor just asked for a thesis statement, and she wrote 2 pages. And a thesis statement is just 1 sentence. So and I read the instruction was so long, extra lengthy, because I'm sure many of you that know how to write a thesis statement, I'm sure you all know it's a long process, right? Just to get to that 1 sentence is a long process, right? So the instruction contained the process, but then all the professor expected from that instruction or from that assignment was that students just submit their thesis statement. And the thesis statement is just 1 sentence. But this student submitted 2 pages. And she was like, why did I get a 0? Like, I thought I did well. I wrote a lot of information. I'm like, no, your professor is just expecting 1 sentence. right? And honestly, that student, even before while she was writing that assignment, she was so overwhelmed, tired, and all of that. So it's very important that we know how to interpret instructions so that we'll not be, overwhelming ourselves or, going over what our professor expects. All right. So, all right, let's go to the next part. This is also very important. All right. All parts work as a whole, right? All parts. So all parts of your instructions work as a whole. Now, this goes to every student in this class. Remember what I said at the beginning of this session. Your professor is your professor's joy is that you are able to respond to an idea, or you're able to respond to whatever you're learning. Your professor is not necessarily looking at you, trying to summarize or regurgitate the ideas you're learning, right? So, honestly, when you read your instructions, you have to make sure that you are reading the whole instructions before even reading the required text or watching the video. Read the whole instruction. Why? Because when you read the whole instruction, it helps you to know what specifically you should be looking out for when you're studying the required reading. So, how many of you know that friend that when you open their Bible, right, every part of the Bible is highlighted? Like, you just open the Bible, it just sees the yellow highlights everywhere. Like, there's no space again, right? We all might have that one friend, right? But then, in an academic environment, when you are taking notes and when you're highlighting, it is a deliberate affair or an intentional affair, right? What you want to do is that you are highlighting only aspects of the required reading that answers the question in your instruction. Do not highlight parts that makes you feel good about yourself, right? I know many of us do that, right? Oh, this spoke to me, and then you highlight it. But this is what you can do, right? So you can have, so this is what I do here. So I have two, right? Different colors, right? Green and orange. So green, I highlighted green when the content of the text answers the question in the assignment instruction, right? I highlight in green, but I highlight in orange when, I just read a part of the text that just speaks to me personally. All right? So that's one thing you should do. So you should be intentional with how you highlight. What you want to do is that when you are reading, you don't want to waste time, right? You don't want to waste time. What you want to do is, all right, my professor has said I should look for 3 to 4 points, right? While you're reading, you are looking for those 3 to 4 points. And honestly, this is what I do. This is me. Once I get my 3 to 4 points, I'm done reading, right? I'm done reading, and then I just go straight to typing my assignments, right? That's what I do. I know many of us when we're reading, we're just like, oh man, I'm enjoying this, right? I just want to keep reading. That's good. But for me, that's what I do, right? Once I find those 3 to 4 points that appeal or answers the questions, right? I just start writing my assignment. All right, Jerry.
You don't feel like at some time or another that information that you did not read is going to come back to haunt you?
Honestly, so this is what I do. I don't feel like that, right? But then if my professor mentions something in the class, right, that I did not read, That's when I'll go back to open the text to read it, right? So I don't think you should feel like that would come back to haunt you. Later on, remember, this is an academic environment. In fact, when you're conducting a research, for many of you that will be taking your graduate studies, right? You will be, you would actually be, what's it called again? You'll be required to cite so many sources, right, in your research. So many sources, right? And then, but then you don't have the luxury of time to read every information in each source. You don't have, you just read the parts, or you skim through the text and you look for the parts that connect to your research, right? And that's what that's what every researcher does. Like every researcher, like those professors you actually take in high esteem, that's what they do, right? So that's what you should do. So don't ever feel like, oh, like, an information that you've not read will come back to haunt you, right? No, don't feel like that. I'll say you should not guilt trip yourself in that way, because whatever information you learn is also useful, right? Okay, so yeah, so let's go back to that. Let me just show you a picture of what I'm talking about. Thanks. All right, so let's look at this. Right, so everything works as a whole. So this is what I want to do. Now that I know that there are there are 4 parts, right, to an instruction. First part is the title. The second part is the expectation for considerations. The third part is the expectation for studying. And the fourth part is the expectation for submission content, right? I'm just looking, so anytime I have an instruction, or anytime I encounter an instruction, an assignment instruction, what I want to do is look for those 4 parts. No matter how lengthy, right? No matter how lengthy the assignment is, just look for those 4 parts. That's the first thing you want to do, so that you won't stress yourself out, right? Because now you know that, all right, this is my, this is the considerational aspect. I know that my professor just wants me to read this. He's not asking me to write anything about it, right? You just read it, and then you mentally consider it, you mentally think about it. You're just thinking about it, you're like, this sounds good. Wow, my professor is smart, right? That's it. And that's all. You don't have to write anything about it. And then the next thing you want to do is look for the consideration for studying, right? That's it right here, right? The video, you have the video, and then you have this, read Chartro and Allen chapter 10 to 13, right? And then the next thing you want to do is look for consideration for submission content, right? As you can see, it's all here, right? Once you have completed the reading, right, and submit a digest on the reading, summarizing the key points and offering critique and reflection on what has been learned, right? 600 to 700 word digest, summarizing what you read. Specifically, be sure to identify 3 to 4 most important points you found helpful in understanding Christian apologetics. Provide adequate explanation for the points you identify, right? So this is what your professor is expecting you to write in your essay, right? And then it goes on to say that you must respond to 2 classmates, right? This is a discussion post. You must respond to 2 classmates in 200 to 300 words. And while you are responding, the content of your response must contain answers to these questions, right? What points did your classmates make that was new to you or that you had not noticed before, right? Did your classmates restate something from the reading that was helpful to you? What do you think they misunderstood or gave a weak argument against? How did they articulate the implications of an idea or the implications to life in a way that was helpful to you, right? So you want to make sure that in 200 to 300 words, you're answering these questions in response to your colleagues. So that takes away all the stress, right? That takes away all the stress. And I know this is very obvious, right? Or this is obvious and scary, right? The deadline, right? Wednesday, 11:59, right? So yeah, that's it. So now that we know all this, so how do you now read your instructions? So what you want to do is this, right? You want to read your instructions line by line, right? Paragraph by paragraph. Do not skip any paragraph. Just go paragraph by paragraph, right? Paragraph by paragraph. And then once you are done with that, what you want to do is take notes, right? I want you to write this down. Once you're done reading, you want to take notes of the instructions first. You want to take notes of the consideration for submission content first, right? And can someone tell me why we want to take notes of this first? Why is it important we take notes of the consideration for instructions first? Before going to the consideration for studying and before going to the expectations for studying and expectations for considerations, why do we take notes of the consideration? Why do we take note of the expectation for submission content first, or the instructions?
I think we should take notes for the expectation for the submission, so that while you're studying, you can have those notes that you've taken on what you need to submit, and then you can pull from all that you're studying and take notes and have it together so that you can refer to it as you do the submission.
Very good. Good job. Yes, you're right. All right. Any other person wants to give an answer? Lisa, why do you think we should take note of these instructions first?
Well, for me, it's kind of like a roadmap. That's the analogous thing that I can say, is that if you're navigating to a destination using landmarks, these considerations would be the landmarks that you're looking for. And so you want to make sure that you capture those to form an outline for your answers.
Very good. I like that. So good. Thank you.
Can I ask a quick question though?
Yes, why not? Yes.
Well, this is probably, a ridiculous question. Maybe I'm being too nitpicky. I was an accountant in my former life. But when you get down to the responding to your classmates' digest, it says reply to them with feedback and critical analysis in a 200 to 300 word reply. Now, is that 2 submissions of 200 to 300 where you address each classmate individually? Or is that the 200 to 300 word reply would be to both classmates within a maximum of 300 words? Or is that a point where you would reach out to your professor and say, do you want 2 to 300 words per classmate, or do you want 2 to 300 words for both combined?
No, so it's supposed to be 2 to 300 words per classmate.
Okay. So it's 2 replies, 2 to 300 words each.
Yes, correct.
Okie dokes.
Yes. Yeah. That's a very good question. Yes. Yeah. All right. Any other questions so far? Okay, so let's go to the next part of this, right? So we're looking at keywords, right? So we're looking at key terms to consider in assignment prompts, right? So key terms, right? So the first thing you want to look out for are the numbers. Numbers. This is so important. Numbers. Always be on the lookout for numbers. They help you understand the quantity of thoughts and specific content that should be communicated within a submission draft. All right. And that was the question Lisa was asking. So Lisa, your question was actually a very good question. All right. Very good question. Yeah, because we must never lose sight of the numbers in an instruction. So if you look at what we have here, so let's look at this same one. So what's the first number that you see here?
30 points possible.
Yes, 30 points possible. That's a good observation right there. Yes. What's the second one that you see there?
10 hours.
Yeah, it's going to take us 10 hours to complete this assignment. Yes, it actually took us more. It took me more than 10 hours to complete this. Yes, good. What's what number can we see here?
10, 13.
Number? Yes, 10 to 13, right? Your professor is not asking you to read chapters 1 to 2. The professor is asking you to read 10 to 13, all right? So, can you see, this is where students may even stress themselves, right? Your professor might be asking you to just read 10 to 13, and then you're reading 5 to 13 or the whole book, right? And like, no, he just asked you to read only 10 to 13. All right, so that's it. What other number can you find here?
The video is 23 minutes long.
Very good. The video is 23 minutes long. Very good. Awesome. All right. What other number?
600 to 700.
Yes, 600 to 700 word, right? So it means that whatever you write in your essay must be 600 to 700 word count. What other number do you see there?
3 to 4 important points, and each must have an adequate explanation.
Very good. I like that. Yes, 3 to 4 most important points. Good. All right, what other number do we find here?
Reading at least 2 to 3 of your classmates' digests.
Yes, read at least 2. Good. Now, so you're supposed to read and respond, right, to 2. Many times students will respond to just 1, and then they'll get some marks subtracted. All right, please make sure you respond to the maximum amount. And what other number can we find here? What other number can we find here?
Well, the 200 to 300 word reply.
Correct. 200 to 300 word reply, right? You're supposed to respond to other students in 2 to 300 words, right? Yeah, so that's it. So you must always take notes of this number. So one other thing you should note is this, that while you take notes of the numbers, you must take note of the surrounding context of the numbers, right? So when you see 10 to 13 here, right, the surrounding context is read Chatra and Allen chapters 10 to 13, right? You see it? So you must take notes. And then it says, write 600 to 700 word digest summarizing what you've read. Good. Specifically, be sure to identify 3 to 4 most important points you found. So you must just make sure that you don't just look at the numbers, you read the context surrounding the numbers. So these are very important. And then let's go to the next part. All right? So we have numbers, we have coordinating conjunctions. Now, this is very extremely important. Coordinating conjunctions, right? So that's when we have the word and or, right? So in most cases, you should consider two or more ideas. So basically, in most cases, when your professor uses a coordinating conjunction or the coordinating conjunction and, right, your professor is just expecting you to think of multiple directives at the same time or multiple ideas at the same time, right? And when you see the word or, it means that you should, in most cases, it means that you should choose between two directives, right? So that's just it. So you should always take note of that. Let me look for an example. So let's look for, is there a word or? Okay, we don't have or here. Let's look somewhere. Sorry, give me 1 second. Let's look for, we might have and or. Yeah. Sorry, 1 second. I know I had one here. No. So oh, where is it? It's debates. Huh. Sorry, please. Just 1 second. Just want to show you all something quick. Wow. Okay, yeah, this is it. All right. All right, so let's look at this instruction here, all right? Do you see the word or? And can you also see the word and here? So can someone tell me, can someone help me out? Like, how would you, where is the word or here? Can you read the context surrounding the word or?
Watch 2 of the debates above, or watch 1 debate and read in its entirety the transcript of the Bansin and Stein debate.
Yes. Good. I like that. Right. So what's my professor asking me to do here? Can someone interpret this for us? This one sentence, what's he asking? So these are the debates here. These are the videos here, or the studies, right? The consideration, the expectation for studies, right? And then we have the last one, the transcript, right? This is one of that study. So it says watch 2 of the debates above, and then in parentheses, or watch 1 debate and read in its entirety the transcript of the Bansin/Stein debate.
So he's given, or she, the professor's giving the student a choice of,
Okay.
you showed us all these videos that we can watch 2. We can either watch 2 of those debates, or if you prefer, or you want to do something, if you want to take the other option, you can just watch 1 debate. But if you just watch that 1 debate, then you have to read the transcript of a particular debate of Bansin and Stein.
Yes, that's good. So that's
the
the transcript. Yes, good. So basically, right, or means that you should choose between, right, 2 ideas or 2 directives, right? So if you look at this right here, many times students would read this and they will not, and sometimes they don't take consideration of the coordinating conjunction or, right? So the professor here is saying that you can either choose to like what Carol said, right? You can either choose to watch 2 debates above, right? From the videos, you choose 2. He's not asking you to watch everything, right? You're not watching everything. You're just watching only 2. Watch 2 debates, or if you're not going to watch 2 debates, watch 1 debate and read in its entirety the transcript of Bansen/Stein debates. So it's either you're watching 2 debates or you watch 1 debate and read Bansen and Stein's debates. So you're choosing between 2 directives, right?
Could I just,
So that's
can
one
I
thing you should know.
interject for a second?
Go on, please, Sophia. Yeah.
I just want to say, like, with the second choice, that
Mm-hmm.
conjunction of the term or, that word entirety almost kind of grasps to me that the reading is a little bit more significant than the watching of the 2 debate videos.
That's possible. That makes sense, Sophia. That totally makes sense, right? You can interpret it that way. And honestly, Sophia, some students may not see that. In fact, I would confess to you, I didn't even take note of the word entirety when I was doing this assignment, right? Yeah,
Yes.
I would. Yeah. So yes, right. So,
Yes.
but one thing I just knew is like when I read this instruction, I was like, oh, wow, we're not watching all the videos. Yay. All we're just doing is, it's either we watch 2 of the videos or we watch 1 and read the entirety of Bansen and Stein's debates. So it's either this or this, right?
Yes.
So basically what I did was this. I chose this. When I completed this assignment, I chose this, right? I said I chose 1 debate and I read Bansen and Stein. So the debate I chose was as science buried God, right? That was the debate between Richard Dawkins and John Lennox. All right. So I chose this and then I read this. Oh, by the way, just to advertise a little bit, right? I will advise you all should read this. This is very, very good. If you want me to send the link, I can send it to you. This is a very, very good debate to read.
Yes, if you could send it, please. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, sure. All right. So let me copy the link. All right. So I'll just post the link here in the video in the chat room. Right. Okay. Yeah, that was a very good reading right there. So that's it, everyone. Right. So we're watching. So what I did was this. So in most cases, right, when you see the word or, right, you must just take note of it. I found many students that they don't even take note of the word or, and then what they are doing is that they are watching 2 videos, they are watching another debate, they are reading the entirety of the transcript. I'm like, no, that's not what this professor is asking you to do. Why are you stressing out, right? So these little words here, they actually mean a lot, right? Any questions? All right. So another word I would ask us to look at is the word at least, right? Can someone help us? What does the word at least mean? Like, for instance, if I say your essay should contain at least 200 words, what does that mean? Can someone help me?
A minimum of.
Yes, a minimum, right? A minimum of 200 words, right? Meaning that you can go over, right? You can go over 200 words. right? But you cannot go below 200 words, right? But what if I say your reflection paper should be a maximum of 500 words? Can someone help me? What does that mean?
Don't exceed that many.
Exactly, don't exceed, right, 500. So you find those kinds of instructions in summary papers, right? Because your professor wants to make sure that you are briefly explaining a point, right? You say, okay, the word count should be a maximum of 500 words. Okay, so let's go to the next part of this. Talked about conjunction. So now this is one thing we looked at, verbal imperatives, right? Words like outline, choose, identify, summarize, highlight, reflect upon, exegete, apply, record, respond, evaluate, critique, research, conduct a research, right? So words like that, you should always look out for them in your assignment prompts, right? When your professor says outline, what does that mean? What does it mean to outline an idea?
Display a framework.
Exactly, display a framework, right, for an idea. So meaning that you can actually write in bullet points, right? All right, you can write your essay or your ideas in bullet points. Now, this takes me now to say this, right? Your professor is not obligated to tell you to write in paragraphs. The professor expects that you know that you should write your essays in paragraphs. Your essays must always be written in paragraphs. Do not use bullet points except the professor indicates that you should, right? So when you see the word outline, it means that your professor is giving you the freedom to write your points in the bullet point format, right? So you should always be looking for these kinds of words: research, apply, record. One that we saw recently was list out, right? So choose, identify, summarize, all right? So those are words you should look out for. All right, so now let's go to the final part of this, right? Your professor's unstated expectations. Your professor's unstated expectations. So in most cases, I want you all to take note of this. In most cases, your professor expects, there are some assignments where your professor would not tell you to provide a topic, right? The professor would always expect that you choose a topic yourself, right? The professor expects that you know how to figure out a topic to write about, right? Incorporating expected citation and stylistic formats like APA, MLA, SBL, IEEE, etc. The professor expects that you know how to write in those formats, right? Your professor is not obligated to teach you those. Creating a thesis statement, right? Your professor expects that you know how to create a thesis statement for all your final, right? For most of you, you must have written final essays, right? Your professor expects that you know how to create a thesis statement. The professor is not obligated to teach you how to create a thesis statement. Then writing in a formal style, right? Writing in formal style. The professor expects that you know how to incorporate the rules for writing in a formal style or in academic style. You know, rules such as avoiding first or second person pronouns, right? The professor expects that you know all of those rules. Organizing your essay in a way that answers all the questions in the prompt, right? The professor expects that you know how to just figure out how to organize your essay, right? In a way that answers all the instructions in the prompt, right? So your professor expects that you know, your professor expects you to write in paragraphs, right? Always write in paragraphs. And then your professor expects that you're citing or paraphrasing ideas from the required studies in your work, right? The professor expects that. So when you, for instance, for the expectation, for the aspects where you're studying, right? The professor expects that you're able to paraphrase ideas from your required readings or apply ideas from your required readings. And then your professor expects that you're able to write comprehensively, like meaning that you should be able to provide detailed paragraphs. And then your professor expects that you know how to conduct research or find useful sources. Your professor will not teach you how to do all of those. Your professor already expects that you know how to use, maybe the LBC online library and all of that. Any questions about this? All right, let's take a look at something quick before, I think that will be the last part before we go. Assignments. So I'm going to show you all the, at the beginning of this session, I showed you a very long, very long assignment instruction. So I just want to show you all that instruction. All right. Let's look at this lexical analysis of Iron. All right, let's look at this. Now let's look at this. I know I told you all to take notes of the four parts of an assignment prompt. Now let's look at this. What part of an assignment prompt is this? Like, look at this paragraph. Okay, let's look at this first paragraph. What part is this? Or what expectation is this? Sorry, let's start here. What's this?
That's the title.
That's the title, good. So what's this?
Expectation for consideration.
So what do you say? Sorry, someone said something. I'm sorry, I didn't hear it.
I think, would that be the expectation for consideration?
Yeah, it could be. Yes. It says we are revisiting the final exegetical skill introduced to you in this course, lexical analysis. We covered this process during the residency in BIB 512 Greek 1. So please refer to your notes from our time together. Good, yeah, that's consideration, good. All right, what of this? Someone else apart from Abraham?
That is expectations of studying.
Good job, yes. Expectation for studying. So, good job. All right, so what's this? What of this part? What would you call this part? Expectation for what?
Submission.
Oh, good job. Good job. Submission. Good job. In this article, following 3 steps are outlined as per determine which words needs to be studied, determine the range of meaning of each keyword, determine the nuance of meaning, best fits context, and supports with sound reasoning. All right. All right. So, but then not all of it is submission, right? Let's look at this. What of this part? What's this part?
That's expectation of studying.
Yes, studying. Good job. Yes. All right, let's go to this next part. What's this part?
That's submission-based that's submission content.
Good job. Submission content. That's good. Yes. Right? Good job. All right. What of this? This part, can someone help us? What of this
I mean,
part?
to me, that looks like submission content as well.
Good job.
Is it-
Yes, that's submission.
Okay.
Yeah, good job. Yeah, that's submission content too. Good job. Good job, everyone. All right. So what of this?
Expectations for consideration.
No, it's not consideration.
Alrighty.
I believe it's studying, expectation of studying.
Exactly, expectation for studying, because it's telling you to go read something, right? It's telling you to look at the rubric, look at the 2 assigned articles on lexical analysis, keep in focus that the purpose of understanding, so the purpose for understanding how an individual word is used in a particular passage is ultimately to better understand the meaning of the passage itself, right? Well, we can see some considerations here too, right? This is the last sentence, right? So Lisa, you're also correct, right? So, but then the first sentence is studying, the second sentence. So I'm sorry, right? Yeah, the first sentence is studying. The second sentence is just for consideration, right? Good job. Good job, everyone. Yeah. All right, so now let's look at this part. Can someone tell us what this part is asking us to do? You can take your time, just look at it.
This looks like submission-based content instruction.
Good job. Yes. Good job. Good job. Just telling you what to do, right? It's just telling you about the contents in your essay. Good. Good. All right, what of this? Is it the same, right? It's the same, right? Content. This is talking about content. So this is 25% of the grade, and this is the last part, 50% of the grade. That's determination of word meaning. All right. And then what of this part here? Can someone help us? What of this part?
There'll be submission.
Submission.
Yeah, submission content. Good job. And this is also submission content. Good job, everyone. Now, another thing is this, right? One thing you should also take note of is in many cases, your professor will put in bold, your professor will put some words in bold, right? In bold case. So always make sure you take note of those words. Right? Look at this part, may, right? May. Look at this part, notes. It says notes, right? Especially when your professor says note, right? Always put it to consideration when your professor uses the word note, right? It means that it's trying to emphasize an instruction, right? It's placing emphasis on a particular instruction. So always take note of that. And since this part of this assignment does not need to have 7 separate sections reflecting the above, should however evidence attention to the major factors / criteria for your selection of the word meaning, right? So that's one thing you should observe. So I want to ask any of you here, right? Let me ask. I know we talked about key terms that you should consider, right? We talked about numbers, right? We talked about conjunctions, coordinating conjunctions, right? And some, you know, some and some imperatives, right? So can someone tell me what's one imperative that they find here? What's one imperative that sounds like it's telling you to do something?
The getting started. The
All right,
title.
getting started. Yes, yeah. All right, another word.
The verb determine.
Determine, yes, determine. Right, so determine there does not mean you should write anything, right? Just that you should mentally consider something, or consider an idea, or consider a concept, right? So determine which words need to be studied, determine the range of meaning of each keyword, determine which nuance of meaning best fits, right? Good, 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 good. All right. All right, so what's another keyword, or what number is important here? Is there any number?
You will need.
Yeah, the chapter and verse of the
John
book.
1:29.
I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. All right, let's Carol.
I completed this assignment. I was in Dr. Jacobs' class.
Woo,
So
that's good.
you will need, I'm down at the bottom. You will
Yeah.
typically need 2 to 3 pages,
Mhm.
or
Awesome.
and
or, good, or more to complete this assignment, right? You need 2 to 3 pages or more, right? So meaning that you can do more than 3 pages. You can go more than 3 pages, right? So that's good. That's good. That's good. Awesome. Awesome observations. All right.
There's also follow these 3 steps.
Yes, follow these 3 steps, right? 1, 2, and 3. Good. Awesome. Awesome. Awesome observations, everyone. Awesome observations. So that's so the final question I'm going to ask you all is this. I know we talked about this, just to recap, right? You know, once you have highlighted or written down those considerations, right? I mean, sorry, once you've written down those expectations, right? You've written them in your notes. What's the first, or what's the most important part that you should take note of before reading, before engaging with the studying, right? Or with the studies? What's the most important part, or what's the first part you should engage with?
The expectation of what's the expectation?
submission.
Submission.
Yes, the expectation of submission content. Yes. Before reading, you want to make sure you accurately engage and interpret the submission content. That's what you want to do. Because wherever you read, right? Because wherever you read, you want to apply it to the content, right? So, and then another reason is because you want to make sure that you are looking for statements in the reading that answers the questions in the submission content, right? All right, any final questions? I think we're done for today. Any final questions?
Are you posting this?
Yeah, I'm going to post this on YouTube. Yeah.
Okay,
All right.
can you send us a link?
Yes, surely I'll send you all the link. Surely. But first I'll send you all the Zoom link. That's the first thing I'll send. Then later on, I'll send the YouTube link. All right. Another thing I want to also say is this, the final part, right? I almost forgot this part. The final part. Also read instructions before you submit your assignment, right? Because you want to make sure that you are fulfilling every part of the instructions. So you want to make sure that your written assignment corresponds with the instructions. You want to make sure that nothing is missing, right? So that's why it's very important to read instructions even before you submit your assignment, right? So meaning that you've written your assignments, you've written down your essay. So what you want to do is put what you've written, right, with the instructions side by side. So you want to see if you've fulfilled every part of the instruction before you submit. So that's one thing you should always do, before you submit your assignment. All right. Any other final questions before we call it a day? All right, everyone. So it's awesome teaching you all, helping you all, and supporting you all. Hope to see you all again very soon and next time. Thank you all for being here. Have a blessed day.
Thank you.
Thank you again.
So
Thank
helpful.
you.
You're welcome. You're
God bless you.
welcome.
Thank
You're
you.
Great
welcome.
information.
Thank you.
Yeah. You're welcome. You're welcome. Where's my phone?